All right, we're good to begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to our teachers webcast today, discussing NTI promising practices and instructional strategies. We're so happy that you could take hopefully your lunch break or a little step away from your daily routine to join us and be able to hopefully feel rejuvenated and learn a little bit from our panel of teachers that we pulled today from across the state and all different levels. We are so grateful for your hard work, and we applaud all the hours and time that you are putting into ensuring that your students get what they need socially, emotionally, the best you can, academically, and to connect with your families. It does not go unnoticed. So today you will notice that there is a banner at the bottom of your screen, and it will say Go Soapbox. So if you log into the Go Soapbox web link, our password is KDE Teach. And that will give you the opportunity to pose questions real time throughout this webcast. And at the end, we will answer your questions or provide the resource you need to have the answers. We'll also have our teacher panel stay on. So if you have specific questions for them on any of the strategies they share, their ideas, please feel free to ask. And we'll be happy to address. But before we get started, I'd like to turn it over to our interim commissioner, Kevin Brown, to welcome you, and then we will get started. Kevin.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. I want to thank everyone, all you teachers out there doing all the work on the front lines. I know it is hard. I know you are exhausted, and we're hearing that. That does not go unnoticed. I want to thank you for that. I know some of you will be finishing up your instructional year in a few days. Others, and probably those majority of you on today, may be the ones, and that's who we're gearing this webcast for you. That have some of you have about 4 weeks left to go, and we know that is going to be a very heavy lift. But just know that they're kids and counting on you to do this, and it will make a huge difference in their lives to have this additional instruction so that they have at least the equivalent amount of instruction compared to their peers in other parts of the state that have already finished up the school year and finished those 1,062 hours. We have a great teacher panel for you today. Today is not designed to change your practice, change your curriculum or anything, or provide a new mandate from KDE. It's simply to give you additional resources, share some ideas around the state, and just for your benefit. And so we hope you take advantage of the questions. And if you need to just vent a frustration about non-traditional instruction, that's not even a question. You can do that as well. So you don't need to continue hearing from me. We want to really get to the discussion and the important topics today. So Amanda, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. I am going to post the PowerPoint here, and we will get started. Again, just to remind you that we do have an opportunity for you to give feedback. So it would be through the Go Soapbox app. Please post questions, and they will come up in real time, and we will follow those. So today, what we have is a fantastic panel of teachers. If you notice, I would like to introduce them, and then you'll get to hear from them and their questions. But I'd like to thank Emily Alexander from Madison County. She teaches family consumer science, and we have a couple of our family consumer science teachers because of the hands-on nature of their work. I think some of their strategies would be really interesting for you. We have Danielle Cooper from Boone County, 8th grade English language arts. We know middle school is a special group, and especially to remain engaged. We have Stacey Crow, who's from Ohio County, who teaches special education. Again, a very important population that is challenging yet absolutely essential that we get it right. Paula Faulkner from Mason County, 3rd grade. Again, elementary. Candace Holder, Owensboro Independent, for a kindergarten teacher. These early years are challenging as well in their own nature. Lots of parent engagement on this piece. Heather Meredith, from Barron County, 7th grade science, another very interactive subject area that can be a challenge if we don't get it right. And Ashley Woodruff from McCracken County High School, Family Consumer Science. So these folks have joined us from across the state. Again, your colleagues, our colleagues as well, and we are very grateful for them and their willingness to share honestly. So I'm going to turn it over to you, David Cook, to facilitate this, and hopefully you will get a lot out of what they share today and pose those questions. David?
Thank you, Amanda. And again, just add my thanks to Amanda's and Kevin's. The extraordinary amount of work that you all are doing is just not ever lost on us, particularly my division, who is responsible for the non-traditional instruction program. And today, this great group of teachers that we've assembled for this panel is going to share with you the things that they've taken from this experience. And we have, not only do we have a diversity in terms of grade level and subject matter, but we also have a diversity because we chose to have both teachers from new NTI, emergency NTI districts that have just joined us because of COVID, and some teachers from districts who have been with NTI previously and the difference in their perspectives on how this has gone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, and for the panelists, I'm going to use that same order that was on the last slide as you're answering these questions. So I'm just going to ask the one question that you see, the C on the slide, and you all just take that, and I'll start with Emily Alexander, but just tell us about your NTI journey in a couple of minutes and what approaches you've taken that have been most effective. So we'll start with you, Emily, and Emily, if you can, pop your camera on and unmute your mic, and I'll stop my camera showing.
Okay, I believe I have. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, and we can see you too.
Okay, good. All right, my name is Emily Alexander. I am from Madison County. I teach at Madison Southern High School in Berea. I feel like I am one of the lucky ones because Madison County has been utilizing NTI days for a couple years. I'm not exactly sure how many years now, but quite a few years. So I feel like the majority of our students had at least some understanding of what the expectations for NTI assignments and the duties that went around that were. So in that respect, it probably was a little easier for our students to get into the groove of NTI days. So I'm not exactly sure. Is there anything else specific? Do you want me to talk specifically about what I did with my NTI assignment?
Yeah,
now,
if you could.
Or is that...
Yeah, if you could just sort of tell us about what have you found over the course of this extended period of time has been the most effective approaches you've used for NTI?
Okay. Well, I definitely highly believe that Google Classroom and those platforms that allow for technology use are amazingly useful for not only me to keep in contact with my students, but also just generally it's easy. It's a great way to keep all the assignments in a very succinct and organized fashion. So that has been definitely one of the best apparatuses or platforms I've been able to use. And I have the ability in my classes to do many hands-on experiences. So I was also able to use a Facebook group that was created for one of my classes. We run a play school, a laboratory play school with my high school students. I teach in the early childhood education pathway. So my students were right in about week 3 of teaching the preschool age kids that were in our play school. So unfortunately, of course, that cut our play school experience short. My students were very involved from everything from lesson planning, to setting up the room, the space, organizing the space, to managing student behavior. So all of that, I had to figure out a way to do that virtually. So luckily, as I mentioned, I was able to utilize the parent Facebook page, and my students were able to start submitting and uploading videos of them doing different kinds of hands-on activities and lessons that the parents, we were hoping that the moms and dads of these preschool age kids could use. They could either just allow their kids to do it along with a video of my high schoolers, or maybe just, this is a great idea. I can do this with my child later. So giving my students a small, even though it wasn't exactly the ideal situation, but still being able to allow them to put themselves into the teaching perspective, having to still lesson plan, having to still teach. And if nothing else, they're getting a little taste of what us as real teachers are having to go through with online learning and utilizing YouTube and having to videotape themselves. So it was a really neat way, and I'm hoping effective way for them to still at least get some small taste of what the pathway requirements involved.
Thank you, Emily, very much. Shift it over now to Danielle Cooper from Boone County. Danielle, just jump in with the same thing. Tell us about your NTI journey as a teacher in a new NTI district.
Okay, yes. So I feel overall it was definitely challenging, yet very insightful to jump into to transition from transitional classroom to a non-traditional online learning classroom. However, at the same time, because I work in a very proactive district and building, it was also easy to achieve success for me because of the supports that were built into place for me. So for example, our school has one-to-one technology, so I didn't have to worry about not providing technology for my kids. And our principal encourages us to have an online presence anyway. So at the beginning of the year, we had already established some type of online presence. For me, that was a Google Classroom, like Emily mentioned. We also make sure that the kids have their Google Drive set up at the beginning of the year, organized folders, make sure they can log into their emails instead of email signatures. And I tell them, like, that's the way that they communicate with me throughout the year. So a lot of the things were already in place, which allowed for us to have some success right away at the beginning. There definitely was a lot to learn. And we were very open to reflecting on what's working and what's not working. I feel like consistency has been key. If I had to choose one word to summarize where the focus should be, it would definitely be on consistent everything. Consistent procedures from the top down. Our principal has a suggested schedule that we follow with our kids. So that was put into place, and that was really nice. We have consistent meetings daily through Zoom with our principals, and I meet weekly, twice a week actually, with my English PLC. And all of those things, again, like, were consistently happening before NTI. So continuing that was really important for me and was successful for me. So I knew I needed to provide that with my kids. So I basically did the same thing. I figured out, how am I going to meet daily with my kids? So I meet with all 4 of my classes every single day since day 1 of NTI. And I feel like that's been very helpful in getting to still have some type of normalcy for them. I feel like that was my goal. When I said goodbye to my kids that last day, that's what I wanted to make sure that I had for them, was that normalcy and consistently just same day. Like, they would, they know what to do every day. We send out our weekly lesson plans to parents and students on Monday morning so that they can get an overview of what's expected of their child in each of their child's classes. And then daily we post those assignments in Google Classroom. As far as maybe the approaches, that's where I've had to think outside the box a little bit. As an ELA teacher, like, the thing that I miss most about my classroom is having that class-based discussions. So I had to just think outside the box a little bit and find some different ways to have those discussions online. One thing I did this morning that was a lot of fun with my kids was we explored Jamboard. I'm not sure if anyone's used that before. It is a Google app, and it allowed me to post a title of an article. And all of my kids got to jump on and create their own, like, little post-it sticky note where they made a prediction about what they thought the article was going to be about for today's lesson. Doing online discussion boards, virtual gallery walks, choice boards, like, just finding different ways to keep them engaged has been really helpful.
Thank you, Danielle, very much. Next, we'll go to Stacey in Ohio County.
Good morning. I'm Stacey Crow from Ohio County. I work at Wayland Elementary, and just going to start off just telling you a little bit about our NTI journey here in Ohio County, and then some of the approaches that have been effective for us. We had never done NTI in our district. We always snow days or sick days or, along those lines. I feel like I've worked so much more during NTI days than the whole school year put together, just of all the different things that I do. Normally reaching teachers and staff and students, I could walk down the hall and talk to them, go and pick them up from their classroom, go into the classroom and do co-teaching. But now it's reaching teachers and staff and students via the phone, via video conferencing. It can be tough when there are technology issues and some individuals that don't have access to tech, or they don't have access to a phone, or some are still essential employees and they're not at home with their student during the day. So it can be difficult, especially with our special ed students. The first week was pretty tough. I'll just go through you a little story that how the first week of our NTI days with our NTI package started. The week started with emails talking about progress monitoring and how that was going to work, and different people was coming up with different ideas. There was guidance coming from everywhere. We were getting all kinds of guidance from people all across the state, and we were picking up ideas from other states of what individuals were doing. We were asked to state something up with progress monitoring, to create a form to help parents understand how to progress monitoring, created a letter, printed up some progress reports, started mailing those packets, got those all mailed off. By that afternoon, we received different guidance. So all the stuff I had sent was sort of like obsolete. I was like, well, it's already in the mail, so it's going. And then by the next morning, all that had changed again. So, for the first week, there was just so much information about, okay, we're going to do it this way. Oh, no, we're not. We're going to do it this way. So it just seemed like it was crazy. And a coworker even asked me, she's like, what are we supposed to do? And I was like, you know what? The best thing to do is whatever we're told, let's just wait a few hours, and it's probably going to change, because, we were just trying to figure out things. Once the initial shock wore off for our NTI journey, I started going back and doing what I noticed some of the other teachers in the school were doing. They were going into the classroom and recording themselves while recording themselves in the classroom, just like the students were right there. It was really unique to watch Miss Johnson, one of our first grade teachers. She was pointing towards the board, and she was pretending like the kids were right there. And I was like, I like that. That's a really good idea, because she was putting those videos up on Dojo, which Classroom Dojo is one of the different ways that we use to reach our students. So we started creating videos. The videos that I was making were me teaching in the classroom, what I would do when my little kindergarten and first grade students were coming in, and then reading more advanced stories for my second and third grade students as they were coming in. So we'd read the story, ask questions, and then I would ask the students and parents to respond via either Dojo or sending me a text, or even commenting on the private YouTube page about what they were doing. So I thought that was really unique. The great thing I noticed was, as I was posting these videos and lessons on to Dojo and to the private Facebook page and to the YouTube pages, was that not only were my special ed students, or the special ed students, receiving instruction, but all the other students in those classes could also experience that. So instead of just helping 15 students, it was like, oh, wow, I've got 200 students that are looking at these activities. Let's see, I've received more phone calls, I think, in the last month than I have in the past couple years from all my students. The amount of texts and things that I receive, I think, is fantastic. I get phone calls on weekends, phone calls on Saturdays. We did a math lesson with one of my students on a Sunday. The mom, she kept apologizing about calling, but she was working through the week, and I was like, that is no problem. I said, we are here for you in this time of need, 24 hours a day. And I noticed that not only I was saying that, but all our regular ed teachers and other teachers in the district were saying that, because my two boys, their teachers were calling, and they were saying, they were telling Ethan, my sixth grader, they were saying, we don't have business hours, or, we don't have office hours. You call us whenever you need help. And I really appreciate that. I was real impressed with that. My third grade son, he sits down for 30 minutes a week, not only working on his NTI packet that he received for math and reading, but he also gets a phone call from his teacher and talks to her for 30 to 45 minutes every week. And they go over the packet together. She just calls and checks on them. And it's, my boys are at the point where they want to go back to school. It's like the newness, I guess, has worn off. And really that's been our journey with special education here in Ohio County.
Thank you very much, Stacey. I'm going to move on to Paula from Mason County.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good.
Great.
Tell us about your journey.
All right. So our school district has been doing the NTI journey for several years as well. So the parents were kind of in a flow of how that worked. Luckily, when we got the news that we were shutting down, we had typically what we had done for a regular NTI was we had those who did technology at home. And if they did not have technology at home, then we made them a paper packet of the exact same thing. So we had those paper packets ready to go on that Friday. Luckily, the next week we were in school 3 days and out that Thursday and Friday. So we gave them 3 days worth of packets that they were used to getting on a normal NTI day. So then that gave us, 2 days to plan and kind of get things together because we knew this was going to be for a long time. So for this elongated journey, we then decided that we were going to do a choice board for the students once that regular 3 days was up. And so each grade got together as a team. There are about 9 teachers per grade at our school, and we wanted it to be consistent. And so each teacher got together on a Google Meet, and we planned out 2 reading, 2 math activities for every day of the week. And then we alternated writing, social studies, and science throughout the week. So what happened was one activity would be technology-based and a different activity would be paper-based. And then the child got to choose what they wanted to do. So each day they were doing 1 reading, 1 math, and then whatever the other subject was, reading, social studies, or science. So each day they were completing 3 activities. So that's how we kind of adjusted once we went into this pandemic NTI situation. So that way, if the kids did not have technology, there were other options there that they could choose from, and then it was consistent across the board that way. And so that worked for 3rd, 4th, actually K through 5 for us. So that's how we kind of remained consistent throughout the entire grade. Once those got started and the parents, knew what was going on, we stuck with that, and we still do that today. So those are sent home on Mondays electronically, or they could go to the school, and outside the school we have totes, and they can just take one of those out of the totes if they would rather have the paper copy. And also our local businesses, Walmart, Rural King area, and our food service areas also had those there for parents to pick up if they couldn't get to the school. So that has worked out very well for us. Personally, I do contact, when we left off, we were like multiplication driven for the next year. So I do contact each one of my kids once a week for whatever fact that they are on, and I FaceTime them. Or if they do not have an iPhone, we go through Facebook, because every parent has that through Messenger, and you can FaceTime through Messenger as well. I show them the fact, they go through that. We have a good discussion together, and it has been just a really good experience for us. The feedback from the parents is they love the choice board. Way better than the packet that we had been given for so many years. So they really like that choice board. for options because not every kid likes the computer. So it has been pretty effective for us. We have the parents take pictures of completed work and they send those pictures to us versus a drop off. So that is how we are sending out assignments and how we are also collecting those as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Candace, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready. Okay, so I just want to start off by saying that I teach for Owensboro Public Schools, and I teach kindergarten at Newton Parish Elementary. And our district is new to NTI, so whenever we received the emails about starting off with NTI and what we needed to do, what was expected of us, we had to brainstorm with our grade level teams and figure out what we want to do, what we want to send home. And being in an elementary school setting, we don't have as much access to using technology with the kids. So we had to create packets and send those home. So we met with our teams and came up with what we wanted to put in our packets. And then we came up with a system for sending those home and then communicating with the parents on what they were going to be expected to do and how the NTI process was going to work, and just really introducing NTI to our parents and our families since it was new to all of us. And my school, I've been very fortunate because we use Class Dojo. And I think that has been a very valuable resource in navigating online learning, especially being a kindergarten teacher, because I have 28 kindergarten students in my room. And one of my worries in the beginning was, how was I going to contact 28 kindergartners and how was I going to teach them online, since they're very dependent, they're 5 and 6 year olds, and they depend on whoever they're with to help them. So I had to come up with a plan of how to help them with their packets. And I knew that the parents were going to be feeling extra stress during this time because they were having to take on a new role as the teacher for their children also. And so what I ended up doing is I found out about a resource called Show Me, and it is an interactive whiteboard. And so I scan the NTI packets each day, and then I record myself writing on the packets and giving the directions and teaching the kids, just kind of walking them through their packets each day. And I post that on Dojo. And then I also thought that it's very important to keep that relationship and to keep building the connections with our students. And so I decided to record myself reading stories to them, so doing read aloud videos. So the first day I posted a show me video for instruction on the packet, and then a read aloud video of a story. And our first week was the week of St. Patrick's Day. So I did a St. Patrick's Day story. And then I got really good feedback from the parents. They enjoyed the show me video to help them with their kids. And I just felt like it was a good resource to use, because it was a way for me to still teach them, even though I'm not physically there with them. And then it helps guide the parents know how to help their kids also work through a packet. And I wanted to lessen the stress that the parents were feeling as much as possible and give the kids some sort of normalcy. So I felt like them being able to see my face and hear my voice would help them ease into the transition and hopefully make it engaging and help them know that even though they're at home, they're still having to go to school just virtually. So that was some things that I did. And then I've also increased the amount of videos that I post to Dojo each day as we have continued with NTI. We are currently on week 6 of NTI. And as you can imagine, the participation and motivation is a little bit more challenging. So you really have to get creative on what you can do to help your kids and families keep going, keep working hard, and to not give up. And so I started using Google Meets, and the kids love that. They love getting to see me and see their friends and getting to talk to each other and just see how life is going. And then just doing fun videos, like I've done some science experiments, and the kids can follow along with me. I've done crafts, directed drawings. When we in kindergarten at my school, we always do a reverse alphabet when we come back from spring break. And so my team adapted that to a virtual version, so that when we came back from spring break, the kindergartners could still participate in that. That's something that the kids really look forward to every year. And so each day is a different letter of the day, and we do a theme with that letter. So for example, the first day was Z because it's a reverse alphabet, and it's Z for Zoo Day. So I did some fun videos that incorporated the theme and letter of the day. We talked about the sound that it makes, and I wore a silly zebra hat. So just to make it fun and engaging and keeping that connection strong, I feel like those are the big things that we have had to focus on. And then just finding ways to use technology. Making it engaging has been, I feel like, pretty difficult, especially in the elementary setting with with not as much technology, and trying to find a way to reach out to those parents. So just keeping a connection, I feel like, is one of the most effective approaches that we can have to NTI, and keep building that relationship, letting the kids know that you're still here for them, and that you're still their teacher, and that you're not giving up on them, and you want to let the parents know that they're not alone, and you are learning along with them, because it's a new experience for all of us, and we're just trying to figure it out. We want to make sure that the kids are okay, their needs are being met, and they're getting what they need. So I just think that the most effective approaches, like I said, are finding ways to interact with your kids, keeping that connection, whether it's Zoom, Google Meets, videos, phone calls. We do all of that. And then just making sure that the parents know that you are there to help them.
Thank you, Candace, very much. Heather, Meredith, are you ready?
Yes. Hi, I'm Heather Meredith from Barron County Middle School. I am a 7th grade science teacher. So this is actually our 5th year with NTI. So this isn't something new for us. Obviously, the COVID closure is definitely new. But when we started with NTI, we had a great routine going. We knew that we had to give the students work that was skills that they could use throughout the whole year, since we couldn't predict the weather. We didn't know when that was coming. And so when we first got word that we were closing, we already actually had days 1 through 5 of our NTI ready. So that was great, because we already had 2 through 5 that we could use. We had used one day for snow. So we only had to create at that time 6 through 10. So we just went with the same thing that we had done before, those skills that they could use throughout the whole year, since we didn't know how long this closure was actually going to be. Once we got into it a few weeks and realized that this is going to be much bigger than we had anticipated, we actually moved to doing regular content where we left off for the year, where we left off when we left. What I think was most effective for us, we actually moved to a new structure recently in the past, I would say 2 to 3 weeks. We formatted, specifically in the middle school, we formatted our weeks as our first, second, and third period classes would actually do work on Mondays and Tuesdays. And then our 4th, 5th, and 6th periods would do work on Wednesday and Thursday. And then that would leave our Fridays for wellness days. Our guidance counselors would get on, would create a video. They may have a video from our principal, just something that allowed them to dig deep into their feelings and how the week has actually went. We got some great feedback from our parents and our students. It took a little stress off. Our parents, I think, were getting overwhelmed. They were having to be this teacher now for not only maybe one student, but multiple students. So we got great feedback. It also allowed us as teachers to really dig deep into the instruction, because we knew we could focus solely on those 3 classes for 2 days, and then the next 2 classes for the other 2 days. And I think that that has been a major turning point, especially for us in the middle school. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. And finally, we have Ashley Woodruff. Ashley, are you ready?
I am.
Right ahead.
Hi.
There you are.
Okay, so I guess I'll just say that I am a family consumer science teacher from McCacken County High School, and my focus is on the culinary pathway. I teach foods and nutrition, culinary 1 and culinary 2. And before I start talking about a few of the techniques that I used during NTI, I think it's important to discuss, and a lot of other the teachers have mentioned, that when designing assignments for distance learning, teachers have to be sensitive to the fact that not all households are equally equipped. My school is 1-to-1 with Chromebooks, but not all students have access to reliable internet. And beyond the technology barrier, I was also sensitive to the fact that some of the students couldn't purchase groceries or supplies that were going to be necessary for hands-on learning at home, even when not in a pandemic. So not every idea is going to work for all populations and every student. So it was important to me that I gave them choices to do at home. So some of the things I did for NTI, as part of a lab-based class, oftentimes I demonstrate skills and or I show videos that demonstrate skills. And as some of the other teachers were talking about, I thought that in order to connect to my students, I didn't want to just give them a video on the internet to watch. So I started doing my own demo videos at home, and I posted those to YouTube and then I linked those on Google Classroom. I had been using Google Classroom in my classroom to begin with, and so that made a very smooth transition from the classroom into distance learning, because that was a system that we used almost daily inside the classroom. So I definitely recommend, especially for the middle school and high school grades, that you do some kind, if my school is 1-to-1, so that did make it easier. But if you can, doing some kind of Google Classroom, Classroom Dojo, something like that, that does make the transition a lot easier. So anyway, I did post those videos to YouTube. A lot of my students are YouTube obsessed anyway, so that seemed like a good way to encourage them to watch the videos. During the videos, I thought that it was more authentic coming from me. And then I was also able to specifically gear what I wanted to teach, the objectives that I thought were most important. For instance, during my first video that I made, I demonstrated how to make a quiche. And I definitely went through some of the safety practices that a lot of online cooking videos would not have mentioned, because they assume that people understand the safety, which is important when I'm teaching high schoolers, that they remain safe in the kitchen. So safety was one of the things that I definitely stressed. Also, I'm looking at my notes here. So I can see this working for lots of different subjects, like visual and performance arts, phys ed, science experiments, things like that. So I think videos, and other teachers mentioned that they had created videos. I think that was very effective. So the way that they got to use some of those videos was that for a choice, if they had things at home that they could use to make whatever I demonstrated, then they could use those skills at home and cook, and then they could show a picture of their final product, or they could watch the video and I had a series of questions and responses for them to send to me. During the third week of NTI, I turned the tables, And one of the choices was for my students to actually make their own cooking video that they were going to submit to me. This was a project that my students have done together in groups in the past at school. And I thought it would be perfect for distance learning because they would be able to demonstrate skills and then show that to me. And I also told them that if they had really good ones, that I would post those on my YouTube channel. And I got some great quality work from students this way, because they knew that not only were that I was going to be looking and grading these, but that they might possibly be able to premiere on my YouTube channel. And so that seemed to motivate some of the students to do that. They were able to make tasty style videos where they were not actually in the video, their faces were not shown. So that was one of the options. And so it just showed their hands and them actually doing the steps and the processes, which was what I wanted to see anyway, was the steps and processes and the objectives were met. So that was a really cool way to see creativity. And also it gave them a choice of something to do that was definitely hands-on focused. I think also it's important when you're doing these project-based learning assignments to provide them with an exemplar. And we know that that's best practices in the classroom anyway, to provide exemplars for our students. And so I did tell them that they can model their video after how I was doing the videos, where it was just me doing step by step, or they could do the tasty style videos. And I did show them where they could access some of those videos and watch some to see what I was expecting. And one of the students even used TikTok, which is, if you don't know, is a very popular app right now that all of the middle school and high school students are using. And she used that to film her video. So I thought that was pretty cool and a good way to use technology that the students are already using on a daily basis. Another thing that I did was drawing on the experiences of students and community members as a way to encourage students to make connections to the real world. Many of my students are working during this pandemic because I do teach high school. And one of the assignments I gave, one of the choices I gave, was for students to read an article about how COVID-19 pandemic was affecting the food industry. And then to summarize that article in 5 sentences. And then they were to draw connections to the safety and sanitation that we had been talking about in school. And so they were making connections to what we were already learning about throughout the year. And then they were to write about either their own experience working under COVID-19 regulations and predict the future of the culinary industry, or they could interview somebody who was working in the industry, who was an essential worker, and answer the same questions. So they could do that through telephone, email, text messages, whatever they had, or maybe if a family member in their household was working. So that was a great way to make connections to real life and or their own experiences. So those are some of the things that I have found very effective in my teaching, and some of the things that I thought were pretty cool.
Great, Ashley. Thank you so much for sharing that, and all of you all for sharing your journeys. And you actually did something that was probably helpful for us from a time perspective, is that you answered a lot of the second question in your responses to the first one. So I wanted to go on to the third question. We might come back to that, but because you talked about engagement and connecting with your students already, I did want to, and we're just going to open this up. We're not going to go in any kind of order. If you have a response to this question, feel free to give it. If you don't have to say anything. So we're not going to go through the group as we did with that last question, but this is more for you to give us an opportunity to tell us maybe one thing. Let's kind of stick to one thing per response. But what would you say are the the lessons we need to think about. What is it we need to be aware of most if we had to do this again? So what is it that you think you want us to know as the department and anybody that's planning for the future? And I'll just, we'll try to see if we can just let you answer as you can, and we won't hopefully jump on top of each other, but looks like Paula is ready. If you're ready to give an answer, then pop your camera on and I'll know that that's the way we'll, but Paula, go ahead.
All right, a couple lessons that we learned and pretty much knew was that several homes do not have the internet, and making connections can be very difficult. So that's why that phone call is important. Reaching out through Facebook, most parents do have that. So you can really reach out in that avenue as well. Also, many parents, there's several parents that are still working, and they have several children at home that they have to monitor in many different grade levels and ranges, and they're trying to help them complete their work as well. So we need to be aware and try to think of ways to alleviate the stress from those parents. Grading students' work also needs to be thought in a different way during an NTI period such as this one, because the classroom support and the home support is obviously very different. And so that grading situation needs to be much different as well.
Thank you, Paula. Ashley, it looks like you are next.
One of the recommendations that I have, and this could be for, I think, any grade, but especially for high school students, utilizing a text system like the Remind app was very beneficial for me. And I know that I have a child at home, and I have reminds for all of his teachers as well that was easy for them to communicate directly with parents and specific parents or specific students as well. I use that through my classroom, but I don't make it mandatory. It's an option. I think in the future, I want to, as much as I can make it mandatory, I would like to do that, because I did encourage students to that had not signed on to Remind to do that. And the students who were on Remind and getting those weekly messages, or I was able to target specific students who weren't turning in work, they actually had a higher level of participation and engagement in my NTI lessons, because they respond very well by text message, where it was very hard for me sometimes to get in touch with anybody by telephone or email. And I think that utilizing those text messaging systems is crucial. And also, I think the way that probably most parents and students would prefer to be reached in today's times.
Great, Ashley. Thank you. Candace, it looks like you want to say something.
Yes, I would have to agree with what Ashley just said with using those systems. Like I said before, my school uses Class Dojo, and that's been very valuable in being able to interact with my students and their parents. And then I think that one of the big lessons from this is just finding ways to use technology and being able to make those interactions with your kids and keeping the connection, whether it's through Dojo, Remind, videos, Google Meet, just finding a way to reach out and let them know that you're here to help. Because often I found that the parents just felt like they were kind of alone. They felt stressed and overwhelmed, and they appreciated whenever we were able to reach out and let them know that we're still here. We want to help. We're still your child's teacher. So just finding ways to interact and let them know that we're here, and finding ways to still teach them, even if it is virtually.
Amanda, I don't know how we want to go from here. Do we need to turn it over to Tony, or how do we want to handle?
Actually, we have a couple things to share with Damian Sweeney. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sweeney to take us through some social emotional learning resources. And David, thank you so much for facilitating. And teachers, please hang on to the line just in case we get some questions. Dr. Sweeney.
Hi, thank you so much. Good afternoon. You can go ahead and switch to the next slide. Teachers, thank you for your input. I already gained some really cool platforms that I'm interested in looking into, so I really appreciate hearing from you guys. All right. So I'm the program coordinator for comprehensive school counseling. You can reach me at this email address and follow me on Twitter. My learning targets today are pretty simple. I'm going to set my timer because I know we're in a hurry. I want you guys to really leave from here having a better sense of what social emotional learning is, why it's relevant now more than ever, who should participate, and then what resources we can use. Okay, so SEL, I know that you've heard it a lot, but it's not just a buzz phrase. I know that it's being spoken about quite a bit, but it's much more than you might imagine. So we've all seen this social emotional wheel from Castle, which is really a renowned group on social emotional learning. They're world leaders in it. But what I don't know is if folks have been paying attention to the different colors and the outer rings of this image. It's really easy to just kind of go to the 5 competencies, which are the self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. But when you take a deeper look into it, you realize that the orange signifies emotional competencies for the students. The green is going to be the social piece, and then the overall goal of everything with social emotional learning is the yellow, responsible decision making. Next, we have the outer rings. So if we start at the first one, is the SEL curriculum and instruction in classrooms. That's going to be the most specific, right? And that's what teachers really want to know about, is how can I infuse social emotional learning in my curriculum, in my instruction, and in my classroom. Next, though, we need to go to school-wide practices and policies. How can this be more than just a grassroots effort in some classrooms, but rather a school-wide effort in all classrooms? And then finally, and I think this is probably the most pertinent for right now, social emotional learning doesn't just happen in schools, right? It happens it happens in our homes and our communities. It happens with our family and community partnerships as well. I've got twin 4-year-olds and a 3-year-old, all boys. So, but second off, I was thinking about this when we were playing a game called Let's Go Fishing. Little plastic fish come up, kids have a little fishing pole and they're trying to get these. Well, of course, you can imagine that with our 3 boys, they're all fighting for, I want the green fish, I want the orange fish, it's my turn, pushing each other and all of that. That's an opportunity for social emotional learning. That's an opportunity for us to teach them how to connect with one another better, how to communicate better, how to be more self-aware, how to have stronger relationship skills. So there are little moments throughout our day, especially now that families are with each other much more, for them to really infuse social emotional learning into everything that they do. So we'll go to the next slide, please. So we are also very familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We know, we hear about this all too often. But right now with COVID-19, some of these needs have been broken, right? So certainly our priority should continue to be on the physiological needs of our students, the safety needs of our students. But what we hope with all of our kids is that we eventually get to those esteem needs, those love and belonging needs, and then the great hope is that we help students self-actualize. Well, right now, the esteem of many of our kids, the love and belonging of many of our kids, and then that self-actualization, they're just not there right now because we have so many kids that are just holding on. So we've got to find ways as educators to continue to build kids up and continue to repair these things that have been broken. We recently spoke with the Commissioner of Student Advisory Council, and my part of that is always to check in with kids and to talk about their social and emotional health. And one of the things that they said to us is that we've got a lot of school counselors that are doing a great job checking in. Our teachers are checking in. But this is really the first time that somebody has literally just asked the question, how are you? Okay, how are you doing? What's helping you get through this time? So these are things that we need to continue to ask during this unusual and unprecedented time as well. So I think that because we know that educators are constantly overwhelmed, I was in the classroom. I taught secondary English. I also taught special education at the high school level. And it's an overwhelming task to be a teacher, to plan lessons, to make sure that you're differentiating for every single individual in that classroom. So we know that just being an educator is an overwhelming task, and kudos to everything that you are and everything that you do. But because we're so overwhelmed, I think that often we hear things like social emotional learning and we think to ourselves, well, that sounds great and that's something that I would like to get to, but I don't have time to get to it. Instead of thinking of SEL as being something that's being taught independently, however, we really need to think about it as something that's infused in every single lesson. And we need to make sure that each lesson that we create is being psychologically supportive to students, right? As we know, a kid that's hungry or a kid that's hurting isn't going to be able to digest and learn as much math or content as someone that's got their basic needs met. So we've got to make sure that we're checking in social. Okay, next slide. I think that because we're also overwhelmed and because we love to be great at our practice, we often think that, well, we can't get to SEL yet because when we do it, we want to do it right and we want to be perfect at it. Well, I love this quote from Voltaire, the perfect is the enemy of the good. So instead of trying to be perfect, let's get it going. Let's get started with social emotional learning. In a second, I'm going to show you these kernels of practice. I'm just going to show you very briefly what that is. So let's go to the next slide. And this is my last slide. These are different resources that I'm just going to very quickly browse. I'm only going to be able to get to a few of them, but I do think they're really important for you to see. So I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay, so kernels of practice for SEL. So what this is basically it shows you that there isn't a single curriculum that has to be used to infuse social emotional learning in a school or in a classroom. I think too often we say, well, I need to buy this curriculum, or I need to make sure that I know every bit of this curriculum that my district offers or something like that, or this vendor offers. But instead, what we need to know is that even bits and pieces of different curricula will be helpful to our kids. We can do something as simple as do mindful breathing, do yoga, get kids talking, do group work, small group work. And those little kernels of practice are going to go a long way. Just going to show you a few other things here, and I've linked all of this. So once you have the PowerPoint, you can go to these links. But here, this link just talks a little bit more about the different competencies on the social emotional wheel. I've got a district resource center for you. So I think that one of the issues right now is I was recently asked, do our schools often, do we have school-wide social emotional learning policies and practices? And I think we should have those. But right now, as I said, I think there's a lot of grassroots work in individual classrooms. And I think that a lot of it can come from districts, pushing information down, showing the importance of social emotional learning that can get to the schools, and the schools can make different decisions on how they incorporate it. Right, so you've got different information here. I do want to show you, we've got a Padlet that we linked as well, and one of my favorite videos of all time is this, why aren't we teaching mindfulness in schools? This is going to show you how it's going to benefit not only your students, but also your educators. So you've got a plethora of resources there. I'll finish up with this. We've got individual learning playbooks for grades 5 through 12. This is just the 5 through 8 one. As you know, individual learning plans seek to help kids self-discover, and they also help kids, they hope that kids will also explore future careers. So you've got different resources here that are going to not only connect with social emotional learning, but they're going to give you individual lessons that you can use as well. We've got a Google Classroom there. We've also got elementary bullying and resilience lessons. So we've just got a lot of different resources that I hope will be helpful. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Damian, so much. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Rob Akers. Rob, do you need me to pull up your slides as well? Rob, are you able to hear me? We are not able to hear you.
How about now? Works a little
Yes.
better when the mute's off. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much to our teachers for your presentations and for your ongoing work and support for all your kids and in our districts and in your communities. I know that what you've been asked to do is a huge task, and I can't imagine anybody in any other state doing it better than our Kentucky teachers. So thank you so much for that. I won't take long on this, but I'm an associate commissioner in the Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness, and part of our office's job is to run the Go Teach KY initiative. And with that, we have found that it's kind of hard to get out and recruit teachers in the midst of a COVID crisis. And so what our team has done is pivoted a little bit and looked at how we can help teachers through this new period of NTI, especially in districts that haven't been doing it. And so Dr. Meredith Brewer and her team, they switched and they have developed a new program called Teachers Helping Teachers. Can we go next slide, please? And so what it provides basically, at least in this current form, is a mentoring program and platform for teachers who are new to NTI, who want to learn some more about how to prepare content, just like what Damian showed and what you all have showed, some different resources, how to utilize the technology and some of the practices that are current out there with connecting with families and students. We've already had close to 90 teachers who have said that they would like to be mentors and provide support for teachers. So what we're looking for now are more teachers who maybe are new to NTI and want to be able to have conversations with people who are involved in NTI, who have been doing it for a while, like you, who were on this presentation today with the experiences you've had. You've already experienced some of the early struggles in implementing it in your classrooms, and there are probably some teachers who could really benefit from that. And so if you are interested in signing up to be a mentor right now, we seem to have more mentors than mentees. But if you know some folks who are interested in being mentored, and if we have some viewers out there who'd like to make a connection with some folks who feel like they've got something to share in this realm, we really encourage you to do that. Next slide, please. And so our Go Teach KY group has a pretty strong social media outlet. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We have several hashtags that are available to you there. There's something going on every day. I encourage you to follow there. If you'll go to the next slide, please. We've been hosting Twitter chats. We've had 2 already. The next Twitter chat is May 11th at 6 p.m. These are the hashtags there, and we're starting to develop a greater following. It was even a brag on them just a little bit. This initiative was picked up by Jeb Bush and tweeted out nationally last week as being a solid practice for teachers trying to support other teachers during these unprecedented times. And so we're really proud of some of the traction that this program is getting. So we've got the links and the hashtags for you there. We really encourage you to please, when you're not completely tied up with your own kids, families, and everybody else's kids, if you just want to network a little bit with some other teachers and see what else is going on across the state, please follow these platforms and participate if you can. Again, we really appreciate all the work you're doing, all the above and beyond, and just continue to pray for your families that you all stay safe and healthy and have a great end to your school year.
Thank you, Rob, so much. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and we are to the point of asking questions and giving those of you who are viewing an opportunity to ask questions of clarity or comments, as Commissioner Brown had said. I do want to extend our sincere thanks to our teacher panel. I wrote down several examples of just great practice. Community involvement is just really inspirational, and just what you're doing to make the best of the situation is really incredible. So Tony, I'm going to turn it to you to ask any questions. If the questions are geared towards our teacher panel, I really like David's idea of turn your video on if you're interested in answering that. And then Tony, if you'll call them for those who pop their video on, if there's any questions for the teachers. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. So the first one came in through Soapbox, and it just said, what are some examples the panel has about implementing differentiated instruction while engaging in non-traditional instruction?
One thing that I do as an elementary teacher, we always did small group instruction within the classroom. So I continue those small groups in reading groups for my reading class. So I would either be on the telephone or we would be visually seeing each other this way, and our group would meet in that situation. I also use Screencastify a lot, which is where I can put up what I want the kids to see and talk them through a lesson, or give them some problems, have them to pause that Screencastify and come back on and go over the work with them. So that is one way that I can do differentiation with reading and actually math as well.
All right.
Is it okay if
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. One way that I have differentiate for my students is with my students who are in special education, and I have collaborated with my the resource teacher very closely throughout this. And whenever we create the packets, we look at them together and we pull out things that may not be appropriate for them, and then we put in things that are at their level. So just collaborating with the resource teachers and making sure that they are getting what they need so that they can be successful.
Okay, great.
Can I pipe in for a moment?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll be super quick.
I know.
The choice boards, I think, are a phenomenal way to use NTI time. I cannot tell you how many of my students who maybe need more of a hands-on approach, giving them those choices. If you don't give them too many choices, but give them just enough that they can shine and really show what they do well, I'm always floored by some of my students who wouldn't necessarily be an academic per se. Some of these assignments that are a little bit more hands-on and giving them those choices makes a world of difference for them, and really helps to, give them that positive encouragement to get through this very tough time.
Great. Does anybody else want to jump in?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I have found that I really like the option on Google Classroom to select certain students. So I've been able to make multiple activities that are differentiated and only select those specific students to have access to that. So they don't know that it's different and they can't see that it's just for them, but that has been a blessing for me to be able to differentiate on Google Classroom.
Okay.
I can just add to that as well.
Absolutely.
Real quickly. I was just thinking of 3 things that we also do. My collaborative teacher is phenomenal, and she does the same thing that was just mentioned, where she will, if she needs to read a text that I'm assigning to the class, she will go ahead in advance and go ahead and read the text, possibly read the assessment questions, get into the Google Classroom because she's my collaborative teacher, and post her video specifically just to her caseload, her students. So that's been very helpful that she's, that she steps up and does that for our kids. Another thing is, just like everyone else has said, the choice board. I created a pandemic project choice board for my kids as their final for the last 3 days of school. And they're really excited about processing what's happening right now and documenting what's happening right now, and creatively, by writing a song, creating a video. And I have some exemplars or just my own work to share with them as well. And then the last thing is, because it hasn't been mentioned yet, is the breakout sessions that you can do. I use Canvas conferences for my daily conferences, although my classwork is housed in Google Classroom, just because our high school kids use Canvas, and I'm trying to prep my kids to get ready for that. So next year, I'm actually just going to be using Canvas for my online platform for everything. But whether using Canvas or Google Meets, there are breakout sessions. And so tomorrow we're going to be using that in the classroom. And that allows me to differentiate and pop into each of the different groups and then have us all come back as a class. So that's just another way.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So for those of you at the elementary level, there is a question about the percentage of your students. What percentage of your students are viewing your videos at the elementary level?
For online classes, it really depends on what you're doing. The other day I had posted a game day, and so we had a scavenger hunt, and I would name things for them to go find in their house and bring back and show me, and whoever came back first got a point and they got a prize. I ended up taking and dropping off at their house. So there were several at that one, probably more than half of the class. But if I post I'm going to actually do a lesson, there might be 1/4 of them. I tend to record it just because a lot of times parents aren't home when you're actually doing that meet. They may be with a grandparent or something, or with a babysitter and unable to get on. So I do record all of my sessions and I post them into our Dojo story and onto Google Classroom. And you can see that several of them view that, although they may not be there for the live class, they do view it later. So overall, I would say a little more than half probably watch it, maybe not at that time, but later.
And I just want to add that we also use Class Dojo, and I would say about the same. It's most of my kids watch the videos. They may not watch it at the time that I post it or on that day because, as it was mentioned, parents work different schedules, and a lot of my parents are essential workers, and they're having to go out and work and then come back home and do night school. So I'm available to my families at all times, and so they may watch a video later that night, or it may be a couple days later, but I would say about 80% of my class at least watch the videos every day. And then some days we have 100%, and then some days there are a few that don't. But majority of them watch it and they appreciate it. And then I do get some interaction from them on class.
Oop. Are we there? Did we lose her? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
she just finished. Or
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. I was like, I didn't know if it was me or. Okay.
No, sorry, I was finished.
Oh, okay, good. I wasn't sure. Okay, I was like, I didn't know. Okay, I apologize. Anybody else want to go at the elementary level?
I think we got the elementary folks.
Okay,
so.
Good deal. I have another question that was kind of sent in through an email that also talks a little bit about, meeting the different levels of students. And this particular question talks a little bit about, returning to classes this fall and the huge gap that's going to, exist when, whenever classes do resume this fall, and what you might be doing, how you're working on trying to lessen that gap. Are you teaching in small groups, on targeted instruction? Just maybe what are some things that you're doing now to kind of help maybe for the fall?
Our school is actually, our teacher contract isn't over until mid-May. And so our school is going to be using the days once we finish with NTI to kind of work on that and to figure out what we might be doing. There've been a lot of talks about a lot of pre-assessment, flex grouping kids based upon those pre-assessments from the data that we receive from that. But our school is actually going to be in planning for that as soon as our NTI days are over and we have those days to fill in. That's going to be our planning time for that. But our goal right now is to create pre-assessments and to try to figure out a flex group system for those kids.
Is anybody else's districts, or are you guys kind of talking amongst your teacher groups about this?
I could jump in on this one.
Sure.
I work at Conner Middle School in Boone, and we are a standards-based grading school. So we really have a very clear picture of where our kids are as far as on the priority and supporting standards that we've established for our district. And because the standards, at least in English, repeat themselves and come back up, we're currently in an argumentative unit that we've already had one argumentative unit earlier in the year. So at this point, we're just reassessing skills. There's not a whole lot of new content that we are rolling out, and that was just already how our year was planned. But we definitely use our data from our standards-based grading to form our decisions of, instructional planning. And we also have intervention time built into our schedule next year, as we've had in past years where we do intervention for kids in reading and math.
Okay. All right. I don't think I have any more questions on Soapbox. If anybody else had any questions for well, you know what? I have a question. I just thought, maybe how are you all, Dr. Sweeney was talking a little bit about social, emotional. How are you all handling your social and emotional health during this time? How are you making sure that you're keeping the work life and home life balance? How are you handling that?
I'll just say that I just find time for myself, especially in the afternoons. It is hard to know when your workday is over. Like I said before, with the parents having their different schedules, and school isn't necessarily from 8 to 3 o'clock. So just finding time to have time to yourself and spend time with your family in your house, and finding things that you like to do and relax, but also being available because like I said, some kids are doing night school right now, so I have to be available to help them when they need help, but I have to remind myself of a time to step back and take time for myself.
Because I've been filtering calls, after we've been required to work from 8 to 3 in our district every day to be there for parents. But I know that I don't think anybody does that, because the parents who are still working, like the other teachers have said, I mean, it's not fair to only answer calls from 8 to 3 every day. So I have been on the clock pretty much 24/7. But I do make sure that I set aside some time every single day to get outside, to spend time with my family, to do something that maybe is just for me, spend maybe even some alone time since we're cooped up with our families. That can be challenging as well. But I think that right now, I think a lot of people are just in survival mode. And I think just knowing that this will end, this will pass, even if it's just after the school year ends, and then we'll be able to relax. I think seeing kind of the light at the end of the tunnel and making the best of a not so great situation and having the correct attitude, I think goes a long way.
That's great. If anybody has any tips that you found too, I know even here at the department, we have, we're all struggling to find, when is it, how do you put aside time to answer those emails and to be responsive to districts who are looking for guidance. So if anybody has found, tips on, I've set aside this time of the day and this is when we have family time together, or, I'd love to hear tips. If anybody has in the last couple of weeks figured out a way to find me time or family time, we'd love to hear those and share those with other teachers and other educators in the field. All right, and then if not, I can pass it back to Dr. Ellis.
Thank you, Tony, so much for facilitating the questions. Thank you, teachers, for fielding real-time questions. I do want to say one quick plug before we end today's webcast. We had well over 100 viewers today, and I know that's just live. So just really appreciate your time and hope that others can watch this, as you all said, at different hours of the day, depending on the needs of your families and your students. But as the question came up about next fall, we do have a webcast tomorrow that will kick off a series. It'll be at 2 o'clock tomorrow that addresses how to start preparing for those gaps when students walk in. Your all's approaches at your district are spot on with really about how do you address the needs of your students, and each individual is going to walk in with something a little different, or they're lacking something, whether that be academic, social, and emotional. It could be any or all. And so we're starting that series tomorrow at 2 o'clock. The same way you logged on today, you can log on tomorrow to start thinking through how you and your colleagues can prepare for the fall. And it sounds like many of you are already in that direction. So just wanted to put a plug in for that. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you to each of our panelists today. We really appreciate your input. So many great ideas. I know David Cook has a lot to share with the NTI points of contact on just some great ideas. And we wish you a great and restful week, and hopefully to help you find your balance. Thanks for all those who presented, and we will see you soon.